Last week, we finished the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, Bereshit, is a book where we read about the creation of the world. We read about the creation of mankind, and we read about the creation of the Jewish people, the Jewish family, starting with Abraham and Sarah and coming down to Isaac, going through Isaac and Rebecca, and then Jacob, Rivka, and Leah. And now we are learning about the beginning of the Jewish people as a nation. They are in Egypt. Last week we read about the death of Jacob and the death of Joseph. And it says that a new king arose over Egypt, and he starts to enslave the Jewish people. They are proliferating. There are many, many Jewish people, and he's worried that his position is in jeopardy. And he sees himself as a deity. He sees himself as very arrogant, very, very egotistical Pharaoh, and he has it out for the Jews. The Jewish people, and so he issues many edicts. One of which is that the Jewish baby boy should be killed, and all the Jewish midwives in the land should kill baby boys when they're born. He was told by his advisors that the redeemer of the Jewish people would be a man, and so he has the baby boys killed. I want to give you an outline of the story of this week's Torah portion, and then I want to pull it all together and speak about one particular aspect which I think runs through this whole Torah portion, which is the character trait of compassion and justice, and standing up for justice and being compassionate and kind when you have to be courageous, when it's hard for you to do that, when it's actually dangerous for you to be kind. And we see it over and over and over again in this week's Torah portion. So just as a brief outline, as I mentioned, Pharaoh, this new Pharaoh, so to speak, comes to power. He issues this edict: the baby boys should be killed, and the midwives should kill the babies on the birth stools when they're born. They should be killed. The baby boy should be thrown into the river. And we know the story of Moses being born. He's actually born 3 months early, and that he is then put into the river Nile in a little ark. And Miriam watches over him. He is rescued from the Nile by the daughter of Pharaoh, Bat Paro. She rescues him from the river Nile. She raises him in the palace, and he goes out and he sees the plight of the Jewish people. They're becoming enslaved. They're being oppressed. And he stands up for the Jewish people. He actually kills an Egyptian. And he buries the Egyptian, and he thinks nobody knows about it. The next day he comes out, he sees 2 Jews fighting with each other, and he intervenes in that dispute. They say to him, why you do to us what you did to the Egyptians? And he's fearful, so he runs away. Moses runs away to Midian. On his way, he comes to a well where he sees this shepherdess, Zipporah, being harassed by the shepherds, and he intervenes. He takes care of Zipporah, and he goes home with Zipporah. He eventually marries her, and then he becomes a shepherd to his father-in-law Jethro. And then we have the famous story of the burning bush, where Moses is out shepherding these sheep, and he comes across the burning bush. God speaks to him from the burning bush, and he takes the task, after much narrative, he takes the task of being the mouthpiece of God to redeem the Jewish people from their slavery in Egypt. That's pretty much the outline of this week's Torah portion. And the thread is people who stand up for justice and for truth, against what the prevailing culture is, or in even putting their own lives in the line. The first example is Miriam. Miriam is the sister of Moses, and when Pharaoh issues the edict that the Jewish boys should be killed, her parents, Amram and Yocheved, they decide that they're not going to have children anymore. They're going to separate, that it's too dangerous to have children. Should they have a boy, he'll be killed. Let's not have children. And Miriam stands up and she says, no, don't do that. If you do that, then there's no more Jewish people. Life matters, and girls matter, and we should proliferate Jewish girls. You never know what's going to happen. Maybe the Jewish boys won't be killed. Maybe there's always hope to do that. And so she stands up against her parents. She stands for what's right, even though her parents are separating not to have children. She says, no, don't do that. So here's our first example of Miriam. And then when baby Moses is born, and we read the story and the Medrash, the Torah story tells us that when he was born, his face was aglow, that he was a special baby. He was hidden away for 3 months, and then he was put into the River Nile in this little ark. And Miriam stands off to the side to watch what's going to happen to him. She cares for him. She wants to look after him, even though she has to put him in the Nile. She's very concerned for him, and as we know, she suggests to the daughter of Pharaoh. So daughter of Pharaoh comes down to the Nile. She washes herself in the Nile, and there's a story that says that actually Pharaoh's daughter is converting to Judaism, and she's coming to the Nile as a form of mikveh, as a form of conversion. She's going into the Nile, but whatever. She sees this little ark, and she reaches her hand out to bring the ark close to her. And it says that the ark was too far away, and that her arm extended miraculously, and she brings the ark towards her. She opens it up. She sees this light. She sees this little baby. She knows this is a Jewish baby. And she says, we're going to keep this baby. And can you imagine? I mean, she's going to raise this Jewish baby in the palace of Pharaoh. Pharaoh, who wants all Jewish baby boys killed, she's bringing this baby and she's going to raise it in the palace. Like, she has the fortitude and the courage to say, no, I'm going to keep this baby and I'm going to raise this baby as my own. And that is given as one of the reasons why the daughter of Pharaoh is said by our teachings that she never actually physically died, that she merited, along with 9 other people, to go completely intact into the Garden of Eden, into Gan Eden, that she never actually physically died, that her body and soul was so pure that she goes up, the whole thing goes up into the heavens. The point is that she went out of her comfort zone beyond what would be expected of her. She endangered her own life to bring this Jewish baby into the palace and raise him as her own. And she is the one who names Moses Moshe, meaning she drew him out of the water. And Moshe becomes the one who draws the Jewish people out of Egypt. He becomes his name. And that's another very powerful Jewish teaching, that we are our names, that our names are a expression of our essence. They are part of our soul, a part of our neshama. Our shame is our neshama. It's an expression of who we are. It's a description of who we are. So Moshe is named by Batya, the daughter of Pharaoh, who takes him out of the river, raises him as her own, and she teaches him that he's a Jewish baby. She doesn't raise him as an Egyptian. She raises him as a Jewish child. And when he goes out and he sees the oppression of his people, he feels for them, his compassion for them. And he, in the incident with the Egyptian beating the Jew, he stands up for anti-Semitism. He stands up for people who oppress the Jews, and he kills this Egyptian, buries the Egyptian. Next day he comes out and he sees 2 Jews fighting, and now he's about creating peace within the Jewish people. How much infighting is there in the Jewish people? And here's Moses coming along and breaking up the fight between the Jews. Let's not fight. Let's be united. Let's be one. And here's Moses striving for that. So he's against anti-Semitism. The next day he's against infighting amongst the Jews, and then he runs away. And he comes to this well where he sees Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, and she's being harassed by the other shepherds. And now he stands in and he protects her. She's not Jewish. She's a poor woman being oppressed by shepherds, and he stands up for justice, for injustice. He stands up for injustice and he protects her. He dispenses with the shepherds and he takes care of her. So there's another example of Moses standing up for justice. One other thing I wanted to say about Batya, the daughter of Pharaoh, when she draws him out of the River Nile, that she had compassion for this baby. She hears the baby crying. She sees the little ark and she pulls it and she opens it up, and then she sees that it's a Jewish baby. But her compassion is her first emotion. The second emotion is, oh, it's a Jewish baby. And the compassion and the kindness and the desire to help overrides perhaps her intellect that says, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this because it's a Jewish baby and I'm going to get into trouble. So here we have an example where, again, the truth of the matter might need to be overridden by the desire for justice, the desire for peace, the desire for life, that life matters, that life's important, and that she steps in to secure that, to work for that, to be part of that. the midwives, when they're birthing these babies, they don't kill the babies. They have fear of God, and they don't kill the babies when they're being born, even though Pharaoh's telling them to. And again, here's an example of these Jewish midwives. We understand that they're Miriam and Yocheved, that they're Moses' sister and mother. In the Torah portion they're described, they have different names that Pharaoh gave them. They are Shifra and Pua, and they comfort the Jewish mothers. They take care of the Jewish mothers. They soothe the Jewish babies. They are so compassionate and so caring, and they're standing up to the injustice of the edict that Pharaoh has decreed that these babies should be killed, and they should kill them, and they refuse to do that. They stand up to that. No, we're not going to do that because that is unjust, that is wrong. We're not going to do that. And here we have another example of justice and kindness and compassion overriding your own personal kind of fear of being killed. And I think when it says in the Torah that they feared God and that's why they didn't do it, that they are, and we all are, God's messengers in the world, and we have to align ourselves with what God wants, not what the outside world is telling us to do. So if Pharaoh is telling us to kill the baby boys, we're not going to do it because that's not what God wants us to do. So we're going to line ourselves up with God, even though it's not what, it might put our lives in jeopardy. We are, number one, we have God as our guidepost, but number two, we also have faith that God's going to help us. And these are examples of where God helps us. When Batya reaches out to draw out the ark and bring Moses close to her, God helps her because her arm isn't long enough, and it miraculously extends out, and she is able to do that. When Shifra and Pua don't kill the babies, they get away with it. Like, it's miraculous how they get away with it. When Moses runs away and he does all these things, and then what happens is he has the episode of the burning bush, and he's walking with his flocks. He's shepherding. One little sheep goes off, and he follows this little sheep because every little sheep he cares and he matters, and he loves each little sheep, right? Which is why he's such a good leader, because he's such a good shepherd, because he takes care of every single little sheep, even the little one that drifted off. He goes off to find it, and he sees this burning bush, and it says that this burning bush wasn't so obvious. It wasn't like this big bush that was on fire. Like he had to turn to see it. He had to notice it, and he notices it. And from this, we can see the message, perhaps, that it's important for us to notice injustices, notice the burning bush, notice the person that's alone, notice the person who needs a help, notice the person who might need an extra phone call and an extra challah for Shabbat, or whatever it is, that we can look around, and we don't have to be blinkered just in our own world, that we have to open up and expand our sense of eye to include other people, to include recognizing that there's a lot of work to do, and we're not going to get rid of injustices in the world, but we can fight injustice. And we're not going to get rid of evil in the world, but we can do our little bit to try to diminish the evil and diminish the suffering. And we're not going to cure all the diseases in the world, but we can do our little bit to try to treat and search for cures. We're in the good age of that. Like, isn't it amazing? We now have a COVID vaccine. We're not going to abolish sickness altogether, but we can do our part to help. And we can stand by the oppressed, and we can protect others. And I think that's the line that goes through this week's Torah portion. When we read about Miriam looking out for her baby brother, Miriam fighting against her parents who didn't want to have more children, that she stands up to them. And then we have the midwives who save the Jewish babies and refuse to do what Pharaoh tells them to do, and they refuse to do that. They're not going to do that. That they were rewarded for that. That they go into the danger zone to stand up for what's right and what's the just thing to do, what's the godly thing to do. And then we read about Bat Pero, the daughter of Pharaoh, who saves this little Jewish baby and raises him in her home as her own. And she teaches him that he's a Jew. Like, that's phenomenal, that she goes out and does what she thinks is right, even though she's living with her father, who has there's so much evil and so much arrogance and so much sense of his own, I'm the God around here kind of feeling. And then we have Moses, who obviously is begins to now the story of the narrative of Moses as the Jewish leader, but he shows what kind of leader he is. He shows how compassionate he is, how much he cares for each little sheep that he's taking care of, how he cares for the Jew that's being oppressed by the Egyptian, how he cares for the Jews that are fighting amongst each other, how he cares for Zipporah, a non-Jew who's being harassed by people that he'd go out to fight injustice there, and so on and so on, so many more examples. And so the thread is we're not here to finish the job, but we're here to start the job. And in this week's Torah portion, we have many, many examples of where people have gone out of their comfort zone. They've stood up for justice. They've done the courageous thing, the right thing, the godly thing. And they had faith that God would take care of them, that God would be with them. And when Moses says to God in the burning bush, who appears in the burning bush and speaks to him, "Who shall I say has sending me to redeem the Jewish people?" God says, "I will be that which I will be." And one of the interpretations of that is that God is with us. So when we step out of our comfort zone, when we try to do something, when we are open to the miraculous, when we attempt to do something, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and God will help us and God will be there. So God has faith in us. We have the capacity to stand up against injustice. We should work on being more compassionate, more kind, more just, and light that fire inside of us, and that acts of kindness have no limit.